Good evening, everyone. In the last class, we have seen what is Angular, how to install the Angular, how to create our first application by using Angular, and the Angular building blocks also. In the Angular, we will use a TypeScript. Angular is a TypeScript based front-end framework. Angular is developed by Google. TypeScript is developed by Microsoft. Angular framework we are mainly using for single page application development. It supports mobiles and desktops, and it supports multiple browsers also. In the Angular mainly we have components, metadata, templates, data binding, module, service, dependency injection, directives, and pipes. Angular application is a collection of components. So we have seen that what is a component. We have seen what is a component. Component is a small portion in the web page. Component represents a TypeScript class. Component is a TypeScript class. Every component will have a template. Template is nothing but a HTML file. Inside the component, request and response logic will be available. Inside the template, HTML logic will be available. Template is a presentation file. Component will send the data to template. Template will send the data to component. That is called as data binding. That is called as data binding. Component to template, template to component. Data binding concept will be available. In the template, we are going to display the data using HTML. When the data is displaying, we can use some conditions for that. Conditional based data display we can do. For that, we need to manipulate the DOM. To manipulate the DOM, we have directives. And if you want to transform the data, then we will go for a concept called pipes. Pipes are used to transform the data. Directives are used to manipulate the DOM. Then service will be available. Service is a TypeScript class which is used to write the business logic. So service may have a logic to talk to backend REST APIs. Service classes will be injected into components. For that, we will use dependency injection. The process of injecting one class object into another class object is called as dependency injection. Collection of services, components, templates is called as one module. So in the Angular, modules concept also will be available. These are the main building blocks of the Angular. We discussed about this and we created Angular application. We installed Angular software and we created Angular application also. To create the Angular application, we will use a command called ng-new app name. When you use ng-new app name, it is going to create the application. Once that application got created, we can go inside the application. Here I created app1 in the last session, cd space app1. I am inside that directory where my project is available. Then we can execute ng-serve command. ng-serve command is used to run the Angular application. ng-serve command is used to run the Angular application. Angular application will use live server with the port number 4200. Angular application will run on the live server with the port number 4200. Let's go to that. Localhost colon 4200. Yes, my Angular application is getting executed and I'm getting some response also in this Angular application. I'm getting some response also in the application. Right. Now guys, if you observe Angular application, how this Angular application got executed and what is the folder structure of the Angular application. So here mainly you need to understand what is the command to create the project. ng-new app name. ng-new app name is a command which is used to create the project. ng-serve is the command which is used to run the project. And here this is the URL to access the project in the browser. ng-new app name and ng-serve URL to access the Angular application. First, let's observe folder structure in the Angular. App1, that is the name of the project that we have given, ng-new app1. Then in this project, you see there is a src. There is a src folder available. Then angular.json file is available. Packages.json file is available. So we need to talk about these three folders and these three things mainly. One is SRC. Your application source code will be available in the SRC folder. Angular.json. Angular.json file contains CSS information and what are the styles that we are using and what are the configurations that we are using. That information will be available in the Angular.json file. Angular.json file build information will be available in the Angular.json file. And similarly, we have package.json. Package.json is like a pom.xml in the Maven. So what are the dependencies we are using for the Angular project? Dependencies and dev dependencies, two sections will be available. Dev dependencies will be used for the development purpose and dependencies will be used for the production purpose. So in the Java Maven project, we will have pom.xml. Similarly, in the Angular, we have package.json. In the package.json, what are the dependencies we are using in the project? Which version of the dependency we are using? That information will be configured. Angular.json contains the build information. So whenever we package a Angular application, it will create the dist folder in the app1. So in the dist folder, the complete code will be available. Index.html is the welcome page in the Angular. Main.ts is the main TypeScript file in the Angular. So that configuration, build configuration, in which server it has to run, when it should go for the development server, when it should go for the production, how the development build should happen, how the production build should happen. All that information will be available in Angular.json. Angular.json contains build information. Package.json contains dependencies information. And we have SRC. Inside the SRC, index.html main.ts file will be available and styles.css file will be available. Index.html file is called as the welcome file for the Angular application. Angular application execution will start from index.html. And in the SRC, by default, we are having app component CSS, app component HTML, app component TS file, app component module file, app module, app component HTML, app component CSS. So app component is created by default in the Angular. App component is called as parent component in the Angular. App component is called as parent component in the Angular. So in the Angular, we need to understand that packaging structure. Okay, what is the packaging structure that we need to remember in the Angular applications? Okay, so first one, project name will be created. Assume that app1 is our project name. Inside the app1, we need to understand SRC. Then we need to understand one file called angular.json, and we need to understand one more file called package.json. These are the two important files that we need to remember: angular.json, package.json, and SRC. Inside the SRC, we are having several childs. Inside the SRC, we are having several childs. What are those childs? One is app available, and in this we are having, inside the SRC, we are having index.html, and we are having main.ts, and we are having style.css. CSS file is available in the SRC. In the app component.ts, component.html, app.component.ts, app.component.html, com.ts, right? Component CSS, component HTML, component CSS. Three main files will be available: component.ts, component.html, component.css. There is no space. Okay, so like this we will have in the Angular project structure. Inside the app, we will be having app.component.ts, app.component.html, app.component.css, right? app.component.spec.ts. This spec.ts is a unit test file. This is styles, styles, CSS styles will be available. This is called as template. This is component class. These are the things which are available inside the app folder, app component. Index.html is available, main.ts is available, style.css available, angular.json available, package.json is also available. So this is the directory structure we have inside the project. SRC. Inside the SRC, we have app component and we have index.html and main.css. This is one structure. Okay, SRC, angular.json and package.json. This is one line. In this app, this is one line. So like this, our Angular project got created. Angular project got created. Okay, project folder. App1 is our project folder. App1 is our project folder. Okay, SRC. It contains application source code. Front-end source code will be available. Okay, now app. App is the default component in Angular. App is the default component in Angular application. Component contains below things. Every component contains component class, component template, component CSS, component test file, that is spec.ts. App component is the default component in the Angular application. When you create the Angular project, by default, app component will be created. App is the default component in the Angular application. When you create the Angular project, by default, app component will be created. By default, app component will be created. I'm going speed. Man, I'm explaining the project structure, man. I'm not writing any code. People are feeling that I'm going speed. What to do? I'm just explaining the structure of the project. Nobody will do that. Nobody will do that. I'm just explaining the structure of the project. People are sending messages. I'm going speed. Kya karu bhai? Whenever you create the Angular application, project structure will be created like this. Inside the project, we will have the SRC directory. SRC directory represents the source of the project. App1 is our project. What is the command we are using to create the project? Ng new app name. Ng new app name is the command which we are using to create the project. Once we create the project, we can see this folder structure. SRC available, angular.json available, package.json is available. Package.json contains dependencies required for the application. It is equal to pom.xml, package.json. This file contains application dependencies, like which version of the Angular, which version of the TypeScript we need to use, which version of the Angular packages we need to use. All those things will be part of package.json. This file contains application dependencies. Okay, angular.json contains angular.json. This file contains application app build information. When I want to deploy my application, how the project build should happen, welcome file name also. That means what is the default page it should open when we access Angular application URL. That welcome file name and application build information will be available in AngularJSON, angular.json and package.json. App is the default component in the Angular application. Every component, app is the default component in the Angular application. App is also called as a parent component. App is also called as a parent component. Every component contains one component class, one template class, one CSS file and component test file also will be available. Index.html is the welcome file for the Angular project. Index.html, it is called as welcome file. It is called as welcome file. Whenever you hit the Angular URL, by default, index.html file will be loaded. By default, index.html file will be loaded. Style.css, this is global CSS file in the project. In the whole project, if you want to apply any common CSS, multiple components will be available in the Angular. Every component will have its own style file. Every component will have its own style file. If you want to add some common styles for all the components, then we will go for style.css. Style.css. And here we have one more file called main.ts. What is this main.ts? Main.ts, it is going to load browser module to load our application. Here platform browser dynamic, we are using Angular platform browser dynamic app module. Platform browser dynamic bootstrap module is the app module catch error console.error. It is used to load our app module in our application. It is main.ts is called as a bootstrap TypeScript file. Main.ts, it is bootstrap file. It is bootstrap file to load app module. It is bootstrap file to load our app module. So in the Angular, modules concept is available. Collection of services, components and templates are called as one module. Whenever we create the Angular application, this structure will be created. SRC directory will be created. SRC contains application source code. Inside the SRC, we have the app module, we have index.html, we have main.ts, we have style.css. What is app? App is called as one component. App is called as one component, which is called parent component, or we can call it as default component in the Angular. This is also called as parent component. Sir, what is a component in the Angular? If you take a web application, that web application will be divided into multiple parts, or web page. If you take a web page divided into multiple parts. So let me take this web application. Header part will be available and the footer part will be available in the application. And here menu part will be available in the application. Here body part will be available. So this is header of the application and web page. This is footer of the web page. This is body and this is menu. Like this, we are going to decide our project. We are going to develop our web page. Header will be available for a web page. Footer will be available. Menu will be available. Body will be available. Okay. For the header, here header will contain header component. For the header section, we will create header component. Okay. For footer, we are going to create footer component. Header will have a header component. To display the header in the project, we will create header component. To display body, here we will create body component in the Angular. To display the footer, we will create footer component in the project. To display the menu, we will create menu component in the application. Okay, Angular application is nothing but collection of components only. So header component, that means my web page is divided into 4 parts. In my web page, header is available, footer is available, menu is available, body is available. To display the header in the project, header component will be available. To display the footer, we will have footer component. To display the menu, we will have the menu component. Angular application is nothing but collection of components only. A component represents a portion of the a component represents a portion of the web page. So to display the header, header component will be available. To display the footer, footer component will be available. To display the menu, menu component will be available. To display the body, body component will be available. What is Angular application? Angular application is nothing but collection of components. Angular application is nothing but collection of components. Angular application means collection of components. Angular application means collection of components. Component represents a portion in the web page. Angular application means collection of components. A component represents a portion in the web page. Like example, header component will represent a header section, footer component will represent a footer section, body component will represent a body section, menu component will represent a menu section. So developing the Angular project nothing but developing the components. Angular application means collection of components. Component represents a portion in the web page. Every component contains below files. Every component contains below files. What are the files will be available in the component? Every component contains below files. One is component name will be available. Name dot component dot css. Styles will be available. Name dot component dot html. Then next one, name dot component dot ts. Name dot component dot spec dot ts. This is optional. So every component contains 4 files, guys. What are those 4 files? Now, for example, if you take a body, whatever the content you want to display in the body, that will be available in the body component HTML file. Whatever the content you want to display in the body component will have one template. So to display the data in the body, we will send some data from the application, right? So to send the data, to receive the data, body component is having body component class. Component.ts, body.component.ts, it is a TypeScript class. That component class will send the data to template, will receive the data from the template. In this body section, to display the data, body template is available, and to send the data to the body template, body component class available. To beautify the body component section, body component CSS file will be available. For body component any unit testing, we will write in the spec.ts file. Like controller, service, DAO. Similarly here, component TS, component HTML, component CSS. Component.ts, it is a TypeScript class. Component TS is a TypeScript class which contains the logic to send the data to template. HTML is called as a template which is used to present the data. While displaying the data, if you want to apply some styles, those styles we will write in the CSS. Every component having its own CSS, its own HTML, its own component class. Are you able to understand what is a component in the Angular? Angular application means collection of components. Component represents a portion in the web page. Every component contains below files: name.component.css, name.component.html, name.component.ts, name.component.spec.ts. Component.css, that means body is one component, header is one component, menu is one component, footer is one component. So to develop this web page, we need 4 components. Every component represents a portion. Every component will have a CSS file. Every component will have a HTML file. Every component will have a component class. Every component will have a unit test class also. CSS, component CSS. So this component CSS styles are applicable for only for this component. This component HTML file contains the presentation logic of only particular component. This component to TS file contains the logic for only this component controller, like this. See this. Whenever you create the Angular application, by default, SRC created, app component is created, index.html, main.ts, style.css, angular.json, package.json. App1 is our project. What is the command to create the project? What is the command we are using to create the project? To create the project, we are using a command called ng new app name. Let me go to terminal, new terminal, open command prompt, open the command prompt here, terminal, new terminal. By default, PowerShell is opened. Don't use the PowerShell, go for command prompt. Delete the PowerShell. Now I am using command prompt. Now you see this command prompt is pointing to ng workspace. Already app1 is available. I want to create app2. How to create it? Ng new app2. I'm creating a new project. To create the new project in the Angular, we will use a command called ng new app name. Now, when I ask Angular CLI to create the new project with the name called app2, it is asking, would you like to add Angular routing? Currently, no, I don't want any routing. So I want to use a CSS. Would you like to use a CSS? Yes. Now see, my Angular project is creating. So in this app2, by default, app module file is created, app component HTML is created, app component spec.ts file is created, app component.ts file is created, app component.css file is also created. That means by default, one component is creating in our project. That component is called as app component. App component is called as parent component in the Angular. It is also called as default component in the Angular. Our Angular application execution will start from app component only. Now it is creating the project. Project creation is a lengthy process in the Angular. It is taking some time. So ng new app name, it is used to create the project. Ng serve command, it is used to run the project. Whenever we run the project, it will use live server. That live server will run on the port number 4200. So using this localhost colon 4200, we can access our Angular project. We can access our Angular project. That's fine. Once the project is created, what is the folder structure? Package.json will be available. Angular.json will be available, and SRC will be available. SRC contains our application code. Angular.json contains build information. Package.json contains dependencies information. Inside the SRC, what is available? Inside the SRC, app folder is available. Inside the app folder, TS file, HTML file, CSS file, spec.ts available. And index.html available, main.ts available, style.css available. Index.html file is called as welcome file in the Angular project. Main.ts is a bootstrap file in the Angular. Style.css is a global style file. If you want to apply some common styles for all the components in the project, then we will go for this global CSS. The CSS which is available in the CSS file which is available in the SRC, that is called as global CSS, and every component will have its own CSS. Are you able to understand the project structure in the Angular? What is Angular.json? What is the package.json? What is SRC? SRC contains source. Angular.json contains the build information of the Angular project. Package.json contains dependency details. What is app? App is a default component in the Angular. What is a component? Component is a portion in the web page. Angular application is nothing but collection of components only. Every component will have a CSS, will have a template, will have a TypeScript class, will have a spec file. Spec file is nothing but a test file. So whenever I create the Angular project, see here, I created app2. So let's go inside the app2, cd space app2. Now I'm in the app2. If you see the app2, src is available. Inside that app is there, index.html, main.css and style.cs. Okay. Inside the app, css, html, spec.ts, component.ts is available. Then package.json. Package.json contains dependencies. What is angular.json? Angular.json contains my build configuration. Welcome file. What is the welcome file? What is the global CSS file? What is the welcome file? All that information is available in angular.json. And package.json contains dependencies. Now I'm going to run the application ng serve. When I execute ng serve command, it is going to run the project. It is going to run the project. Okay, it will use live server. It is packaging my project. It is bundling my project, and it is going to run on the live server with the port number 4200. We need to understand execution process also. How this application is running, how we are getting the output, from where application execution is starting, that we need to understand. Application started successfully, running on the port number localhost colon 4200. Go here, localhost colon 4200, execute. Okay, fine. I got some output. But how it is executing? What is the execution flow of this Angular application? Let's understand what is the execution flow of the Angular application. Whenever you hit up the URL from the browser, what is that URL we are hitting? http://localhost colon 4200. This is the URL we are hitting to access our Angular application. Am I right? So this is the URL we are hitting in the browser to access our Angular application. Assume that this is the browser. This is the browser. In the browser, we are hitting this URL. In the browser, we are hitting this URL. All right. Now, what is happening in the background? What is happening in the background? In the background, our application will execute from welcome file. In the Angular application, there is a welcome file called index.html. In the src, we have index.html. Index.html file is called as a welcome file in the Angular. Okay, in the Angular application, there is a index.html. Index.html will receive the request. That is a welcome file. That is a welcome file. Whenever you send a request from the browser, your request will go to a welcome file called index.html. This index.html file will have one selector called app root. It is having one selector called app root. You see, app root is a selector. It is like a ID. See here, go to app2. In the app2 src, index.html is available. Inside the index.html, we are having app root in the body. What is this app root? This app root is called as a selector, app component selector. Okay, app root is available. Sir, what is this app root? This app root is called as a selector to access app component. So the request is coming to index.html. The request is coming to index.html. That index.html is executing. It is invoking app root. That means it is accessing a component. I told you, Angular application means collection of components. Every component represents a portion in the web page. Every component contains CSS, HTML, TS. So here, if it is a body component, body.component.css, body.component.html, body.component.ts, body.component.spec.ts. If it is a login component, login.component.css, login.component.html, login.component.ts. Every component will contain component name.component.css, component name.component.html, component name.component.ts. For every component, these files are common. Okay, but now here, if you go to our Angular project, we are running the project by using a command called ng serve command. When we run that project, it is running in the live server with 4200. I'm going to browser. I'm sending a request localhost colon 4200. When I send a request to localhost colon 4200, it will send that request to index.html. Index.html is the file which is going to receive our request. Index.html is the file which is going to receive our request. Inside the index.html, we have a app root. See here, index.html app-root is available /app root. Sir, what is this app root? This app root is the selector of the component. Every component will have a selector which is used to invoke the component. Go to app component, app.component.css, app.component.html, app.component.ts. When you go for app component ts, there is a selector called app-root. App component is having a selector called app-root. So in order to invoke the app component, we are going to use app root. We are using app root. App root is the selector which is used to invoke the app component. So whenever I invoke the selector, this is app component selector app root, then control will go to app component. From here, control will go to app component. Understand my point? So here, control will go to app component. Our request is sent to welcome file. Our request is sent to Angular. So Angular application loaded welcome file. In this, app component is available. app.component.css, app.component.ts, app.component.html, app.component.css. These three files will be available in the app component. Now, from here, app component ts file will execute, but because it is invoking the selector of the app component. Inside the index.html, it is accessing app root. What is app root? App root is the selector of the app component. So whenever we access app root in the index.html, it is going to invoke the app component. Okay, when it is invoking the app component, what will happen? App component to ts file will execute. TS file will contain the logic to send the data to the template. Template will contain the logic to present the data. CSS file will contain the logic for styles. Okay, now the request came to Angular application. In the Angular application, welcome file is executed. Inside the welcome file, app root selector is available. App root selector is used to invoke the app component. App component having a TypeScript class, HTML file, CSS file. App component to TypeScript file will contain the logic to send the data to template. Template will contain the logic to present the data. CSS file will contain the styles to beautify the data. So app component is executing. In this scenario, app.component.ts. Currently, there is no much logic in the app component. It is just having a class, TypeScript class. What is the selector? What is the template? What is the style? Every component will have its own selector. Every component will have a template file. Every component will have CSS file. So when the app component selector is invoked, app component TypeScript class will be executed. That class will load the template file and it will load the CSS file. With this, app component HTML file data will come as a response. In the app component HTML, by default, 482 lines of code is available. That code we are getting as a output. So whatever the output you are seeing, this output is coming from app component.html. Why? Request you sent to Angular application. Angular application sending the request to welcome file. Welcome file is loaded. Sir, what is the proof to say that welcome file is loading? Let me write a message in the index.html. In the body, I'm going to say one message called paragraph. Hi, this message coming from index.html file. Save it. Go here. Somewhere that message will display this message coming from HTML file. See here, it is overriding. Can you see? Hi, this message coming from index.html file, it is blinking. When I refresh, it is blinking because these styles are dominating that. These styles are dominating. So, hi, this message coming from index.html. Index.html is invoking the app component selector. In the app component HTML, lot of data is available. That data coming as a response. Now, let me remove everything. Let me mention h1. Hi, this message came from app component. This message came from app component. See here, this message coming from index.html, this message came from app component. So can you believe now, whenever we send a request, localhost colon 4200, whenever we send a request localhost colon 4200, first welcome file is loading. Welcome file is invoking the app component by using app component selector. Every component will have a selector which is used to invoke the component, and every component will have its own template. Every component will have its own CSS. So by default, app component is loaded. From that app component HTML file is executed. That app component HTML file response is sent to index.html because it is a single page application, right? That response is sent from HTML file to index.html. Index.html file sent the response to the browser. App component response is rendered to the index.html. Index.html sent the response to the browser. Able to follow? From where we are getting output? We are getting output from app component. Who is invoking app component? How the app component is invoked? App component invoked by index.html. How index.html is invoking the app component? By using component selector. What is a component selector? In the component.ts file, selector will be available. Template URL will be available. Styles URL. That means this component is having its own template file, HTML file, its own CSS file, and it is having its own selector. To execute the app component, we will use the selector. In the index.html, app component selector is invoked. Suppose if I remove the selector, then app component will not execute. If I remove the selector, only index.html file is printing. Hi, this message coming from index.html because I sent a request came to index.html. Index.html is not invoking the app component. Then directly index.html response will come. So now in the index.html, we are using app component selector. App component TypeScript class executed. It's a template executed. It's a CSS executed. It gave the response to index. Index gave the response to browser. Index gave the response to browser. All of you clear with my point? All of you clear with my point? Yes, perfect. Now here app component is a parent component, right? Now in the index.html we are using selector of the app component. So index.html is a welcome file. From that welcome file, we are invoking the app component by using selector. Now I want to create other components. As I told you, Angular application is nothing but collection of components. Now I want to create other components in the Angular application. Let's do that. See, now here only we have app component. Inside the app component CSS, app component HTML, app component spec, app component.ts, app module.ts, right? So now we have one component that is a parent component. Now I need to write my application components. Perfect, guys. How to write my application components? ng generate component wish or greet. I'm saying greet component. ng generate component greet. I'm creating a new component. Already we got the app component, and that app component is a parent component. Along with that, I created one more component called greet component. See here, when I create a greet component HTML created, greet component spec file created, greet component TS file created, greet component CSS file created, and it is updating app.module.ts. What all the modules available, those modules information will be available in the app module. See this command which I executed, ng generate component greet. So greet is the name of the component. For the greet component.ts is created, greet component CSS is created, greet component HTML is created. Okay, see here, inside the app directory, greet directory created. Inside the greet component.ts file, greet component having a app greet selector, greet component HTML, greet component CSS. Greet component HTML is available, greet component CSS available, greet component spec file is available. In the app module, it updated that app component, greet component. There are two components available in the application. But now here I will run my application ng-serve. When I execute ng-serve, my application will start. How many components available now? Two components. One is app component, another one is greet component. One is app component, another one is greet component. Now access this localhost :4200. This message coming from index.html. This message came from app component. Sir, in the greet component HTML, we are having greet works. Let me say this h2 hi. This message came from greet component. This message came from greet component. Is that message printing in the web page, guys? Is a greet component executed or greet component not executed? In this application, two components available, app component and greet component. App component and greet component. But which component is executed? Come on, guys. Come on, guys. Greet component executed or greet component not executed? Greet component not executed. Only default component is executed. Only parent component is executed. What is that parent component? App component. Okay, so Angular application means collection of components. Angular application means collection of component. Component represents a portion in the web page. Every component contains below files. Okay, app component is the default component in the Angular which will be invoked from welcome file. App component is the default and parent component in Angular application. App component will be invoked by using selector in the welcome file. App component will be invoked by index.html using component selector. Okay, we can create other components also in the Angular. We can create user defined components also in Angular application. To execute, to invoke, to execute user defined components, we need to invoke them in app component. We need to invoke them in app component using selectors. Got it, guys? Read the points now. You will get the clarity. App component is the default and parent component in the Angular application. App component will be invoked by index.html using component selector. We can create user-defined components also in the Angular application. To execute user-defined components, we need to invoke them in the app component using selector. Now what I have created? I have created one component called greet. I created one component called greet component. Right, I created one component with a name called greet component. So here what is available? Greet dot component dot greet dot component dot greet dot component dot ts, greet dot component dot html, greet dot component dot css, greet dot component dot html, greet dot component dot css. Now from the app component HTML, we will invoke the greet component using greet component selector. Okay, your request will come from the browser. From the browser, request will go to welcome file. Welcome file is invoking the app component using selector. App component should invoke the greet component by using greet component selector. How to do that? Now go to app component HTML. What is the greet component selector? App greet. What is the greet component selector? Go to greet component .ts. Here app greet is available. Copy this. Go to app component HTML. This message came from the app component. After printing this message, let's invoke greet component. Let's invoke the greet component. Now see, this message came from greet component. So we are getting the message from greet component. Greet component HTML file is available. Now see, this message coming from index.html, this message coming from index.html, this message coming from app component, this message came from greet component. So now see the flow. From the browser, request is coming to index.html. Index.html is a welcome file. This welcome file is accessing app root. Selector is the app root. What is the selector here? App-root. Okay. What is the selector here? App-greet. What is the selector here? App-greet is the selector. Selector is app-greet. Now that selector we are accessing from the app component, then it is going to invoke the greet component. Similarly, I will create one more component called wish component. How to create one more component? Already I created my project. With the project I got the app component. With the app component we got the greet component. Now along with this I will create one more component called greet component. Greet component already there. Wish component. ng generate component name I am giving as wish. You can give any name for the component. ng generate a component wish. With this, wish component will be created. Wish component HTML, wish component CSS, wish component TS, and module file will be updated. ng generate component wish. So wish component HTML, wish component spec, wish component TS, wish component CSS. Wish component got created. So here wish component CSS, nothing available. Wish component HTML. Let me mention H3. Hi, this message came from wish component. I'm writing one message in the wish component HTML. Wish component spec file, we don't need that spec file. Okay? Wish component TS. What is the selector of the wish component? App wish is available. App wish. Now what we need to do here, we are going to get wish dot component dot TS, wish dot component dot HTML, wish dot component dot CSS. Then we got a selector, that is app-wish. App is the default, wish is the name of the component. So with this, wish component got created. Wish component is having a selector. Wish component is created. Wish component is having a selector. All right. How this wish component will be executed? Wish component also should be invoked from the app component. App is a parent component. App component is a default component. App component will be invoked by index. Index file will be loaded by browser. Index is a welcome file. Index.html is called as a welcome file. So whenever we send a request for the Angular application, this welcome file will be executed. Whenever we send a request to the Angular application, this welcome file will be executed. In that welcome file, we are accessing app component selector. In this welcome file, we are accessing app component selector. So with the app component selector, app component will be invoked. App component TS file will execute. App component HTML will execute. In the app component HTML, we are accessing greet component and wish component. How to access that? By using child components. Now, greet and wish are called as child components. Go to app component HTML, app greet, app wish. See, this is the selector for the greet component to invoke the greet component. This is the selector of the wish component to invoke the wish component. Now run the application. ng serve. I'm using ng serve command. ng serve command is used to run our application, Angular application. ng new app name is used to create the project. ng serve command is used to run the application. My application started. Now go to browser, refresh. See, this is coming from index.html. This is coming from app component. This is coming from greet component. This is coming from wish component. So total, how many components are loaded? Total 3 components are loaded. App component is a parent component. Greet and wish components are the child components for the parent component. Look at this diagram. User sending a request to this URL. In this URL, we are using localhost colon 4200. Angular application running on the live server with 4200. When we send that request, it is going to welcome file. Welcome file is index.html in the Angular. In that index.html, we are having a app component selector. With that app component will be invoked. In the app component, TS file will execute, HTML will execute. HTML contains the presentation logic and it is having the selector of the other components. Wish component selector, greet component selector is available in the app component HTML. So parent component will be loaded. Welcome file is loading the parent component loading the child components. Complete data is displaying in the one web page. So this is one section, this is one section, this is one section. This is parent component output, this is the child component output, this is also child component output. Are we able to understand how to create the components, and how to invoke the components? Are you guys able to understand how to create the components and how to invoke the components? All right. Total how many components available in the project now? Total how many projects available in the component now? 3 projects. In that, which one is parent and which one is a child? In those 3 components, which one is parent and which one is child? App is parent, greet and wish are the childs. Now, Angular application execution is beginning from which file? Angular application execution will begin from which file? Welcome file. What is welcome file in the Angular? Index.html. What is there in the index.html? Selector. What is the selector? Selector is used to invoke the component. Selector of the app component is available in the welcome file. Welcome file contains selector for the app component. It is invoking the app component. App component TS, app component HTML, app component CSS. What is there in the app component HTML? Selectors to invoke the child components. So this URL is coming to welcome file. Welcome file is invoking the parent component invoking the child components. So component, what is component? Angular application means a collection of components only. Component represents a portion in the web page. Every component contains below files: component CSS, component HTML, component TS, component spec. To invoke the component, we will use component selector. Now see, we are able to access our application. Our application is having multiple components. Index file message is coming. This is the proof to say that index HTML is loading. In the index HTML, app component selector, this is the proof to say that app component executing. App component is invoking wish and greet. This is the proof to say that greet component template is executed, wish component template is executed. Now, every component is having its own CSS. That is the beauty in the Angular. Every component is having its own template. Every component is having its own CSS. All right. Now, if you see this diagram, body component will be available, header component will be available, footer component will be available, menu component will be available. In the header component, header template, header CSS. Body component, body template, body CSS. Footer component, footer template, footer CSS. Menu component, menu template, menu CSS. Every component will have its own template, its own CSS. A component nothing but a portion in the web page. Header section will be developed as a header component. Footer section will be developed as a footer component. Menu section will be developed as a menu component. Body section will be developed as a body component. Every component will have its own template. Every template will have its own CSS. Now see here in the app component HTML, I have a h1 tag. For this h1 tag, I want to give a color. So color nothing but a style. Where to write the styles? We have 2 places to write the styles. One is global styles.css. If you see in the src styles.css, when you need to write that in the style.css, in the src there is a styles.css. If you want to write some styles which are common for all the components, then you need to go for styles.css. But I want to write the styles specific to a component. So app component styles I will write in the app component CSS. Greet component styles I will write in the greet component CSS. And wish component styles I will write in the wish component CSS. Are you guys getting my point? Where to write the styles? Where to write the presentation? For the presentation, HTML file is available. For the styles, CSS file is available. Every component is having its own template. Every component having its own style. Every component having its own template. Every component having its own style. Now, currently here, when I send a request, index file loaded, index file loading the parent component loading the child component. Now I want to give different colors, red, blue, green. I want to apply colors. So this is app component HTML message. This is grid component HTML message. This is wish component HTML message. Three components, every component having its own CSS. In the app component, I'm using h1 tag. App component.css. Let us write the style for the h1. Let us write the style for the h1. Color red. Color red. Now see the beauty. Only app component text change it to red color. Why it is not applying to other components? I have written style h1 style in the app component.css. App component.css styles are applicable for only app component HTML message. See, the moment I add the color, it is displaying the message in the red color. So in the app component, I have a h1 tag with the content. For h1 tag, I have added a color in the CSS. h1 color red. So h1 text in the app component template should display in the red color. It is displaying in the red color. Grid component message should display in the blue color. Go to grid component HTML. Grid component HTML is having h2. Okay, so to h2 message, h2 tag is having a message. For this h2 message, I want to give you a green color. So this h2 message coming from the grid component HTML, grid component having its own CSS. Now go to here h2, write the color, color dot blue, color dot blue. This is applicable for only grid component HTML file. See, that is coming in the blue color. That is coming in the blue color. App component CSS h1 having red color, grid component h2 having a blue color. It is coming in the blue color. I want to display this in the green color, wish component. Go to wish component. Wish component HTML is having h3. Go to wish component CSS. Wish component CSS h3, write a color, color dot green. I'm giving green color for that. The moment when I come save the file, code is deploying, latest code is deploying. Now it is coming to green color. This message coming from index.html. This message came from app component. This message came from grid component. This message came from wish component. Understand the beauty? Understand the beauty? Someone is asking, sir, how you remember all these things? Java, DevOps, Angular. Docker, Kubernetes, Linux, AWS, Spring Boot. You need to ask the question related to Angular, man. Today topic is Angular. I'm very good in Angular. In my project, we will develop front end by using Angular, back end by using Spring Boot microservices. We are using AWS Cloud. We are using DevOps to deploy the application. We are doing full stack. Got it? So this is my experience. I'm working in the company. So this is my experience. If you don't work in the company, we will not teach with this much confidence. Okay. So all these things I have not learnt in single day, man. I spent 10 years in the industry. That experience. Within the 10 years, I worked with 5 different projects. I worked with 5 different projects. I worked with several technologies. So I got hands-on experience with all these things. Good. So my life story, that is a different. We'll talk about later. Are you able to understand Angular project folder structure? How to create the Angular architecture? Angular architecture, and Angular project folder structure, and Angular components, how to create a component, and what is the execution flow, how to invoke child components from the parent component, how to add the styles. Are you guys clear with this part? Good. Look at the Angular architecture. Component. Component is a TypeScript class. As of now, we just created the components and template. We did not discuss about the data bindings. We did not discuss about the directives. We did not discuss about pipes. We did not discuss about the services. We did not discuss about the dependency injection. We discussed about just a component and a template. Component nothing but a portion in the web page. Template nothing but a presentation file. Slowly we will understand all these points and we will develop one project on the Angular and we will integrate the front end and back end. Then you will enjoy the session. I will show you that complete end-to-end integration also. Spring Boot REST API, Angular front end. Front end application will communicate with the back end application. You will see this complete architecture. You will see this complete architecture. I told you, you can keep full stack developer in your resume. You can keep, you are a full stack developer in the resume. Got it? For many people, they are listening Angular first time, but I'm sure you will enjoy. For Java developers, learning the Angular is very easy. Most of the concepts are related to Java concepts only. If any front-end developer without having the Java knowledge, if they are learning Angular for first time, they will feel very difficult. Array, what is component raw? What is service raw? What is data binding? What is HTML? What is CSS? What is directive? What is backend API call? They will get lot of questions. But for Java developers, it is a cakewalk. Component means controller, request and response. Template means presentation file. Controller will send the data to view. View will send the data to component. Data binding means exchanging the data. Service means business logic. So to access a service class method in the component class, one class object we need to inject into another class. That is called dependency injection. That's it. Dependency injection, data binding, component, template. So this is the architecture of the Angular. Then folder structure. When we create the Angular project by using ng new command, project will be created. By default in the project, app component will be created and welcome file will be created. Angular.json will be created, package.json will be created. Package.json contains the dependencies. Package.json is equal to our pom.xml. Angular.json will contain the build information. Style.css will contain global styles. If you want to write some styles common for all the components, then we will go for styles.css. Main.ts contain bootstrapping logic. Index.html is a welcome file. Where that welcome file is configured? Welcome file is configured in the Angular.json. App component contains a TS, that means component class, template file, CSS file, unit test file. App component is the default component in the Angular. That is also called as parent component. And Angular application nothing but collection of components only. Component represents a portion in the web page. Every component contains below files: CSS, HTML, TS. TS file contains a selector to invoke the component, and that contains the HTML file location, CSS file location. Every component will have its own CSS file, its own HTML file. HTML file nothing but template, which will contain presentation logic. For every component, presentation file will be available, styles file will be available. Body component will have body template, body CSS. Footer component will have footer template, footer CSS. Header component will contain header template, header CSS. Menu component will contain menu template and menu CSS. Angular application means collection of components. Component represents a portion in the web page. Every component contains below files: component.css, component.html, component.ts. Got it? How that project flow is executing? When I'm sending a request from the browser, my request is going to index.html. Index.html is called as a welcome file. Index.html is called as a welcome file in the Angular. Every request will be loaded with this welcome file. In that welcome file, we are having a app component selector. Every component will have a selector which is used to invoke the component. Where that selector will be available? Selector will be available in the component class. Component class having a selector, app root. App root is invoked in the index.html. So index.html having its own message and it is invoking app root. When it is invoking app root, it will go to app component ts. App component ts selector matching fine. Execute the logic of the app component. Go to app component template and app component css. App.component.html. Go to app.component.html. Print this message. After this message is printing, it is having app greet selector. Go to greet component ts file. Execute the logic. Invoke the greet component template. Greet component HTML is having this message. This message will be printed with the CSS. Then it will go to wish component. Wish component TS file will execute. Wish component HTML file will execute. It will print the message. So first index file, from index app component, from app component greet component and wish component. We are getting the response from 3 components in the single page. Got it? Okay. Can you guys practice this before coming to tomorrow's session? Can you guys practice this before coming to tomorrow's session? The task is you should develop the application like this. You should develop the application like this. You need to create 3 components. By default, app component will come. You need to create a greet component. You need to create a wish component. Greet component and wish component you need to invoke from the app component. App component message should display in the red color. Greet component message should display in the blue color. Wish component should display in the green color. Can you guys do this task? All right, fine, good. Anybody who is having doubts, you can unmute your mic and you can ask. Come on, guys. Any questions?
Sir, we have called the greet component in app component. And
Correct.
then we call the wish component also in app component.
Correct.
So can we do nested thing, means inside the grid we can also call the wish component?
Yes, you can do that. You can do that. You want to call wish component from the grid component, na? Yes, I'm removing the wish component selector from the app component. And so in the app component, I'm calling the grid component. In the grid component, I'm calling the wish component.
Wish component.
Okay, still it is fine. That is also we can do. One component can access another component.
Hello, sir.
Hello,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Actually, my doubt is for using Docker and Kubernetes when we are pushing that images in the Docker app, it is giving the error.
Yes, sir. Docker questions I told you, na, tomorrow I will take a doubt session at 11 o'clock.
11 o'clock. Morning class is not there tomorrow.
Morning class is there. After the class, we will take it.
And
okay. Yep.
Sir, not a doubt here, but can you open index.html?
Yes. Index.html, that is a welcome file. Yes, sir.
1 minute, sir. Yeah, okay, I got it.
So in the index.html, in the body section, we are writing the selector of the app component. So that index.html is talking to app component. In the app component, we are writing the selectors of the greet and wish.
Sir?
Yes.
Hi, sir. This is Vikas.
Yeah, hi, Vikas.
So, sir, in our project, there are some navigation bar, correct? So, in navigation bar, we are creating multiple HTML files. So, for multiple HTML files, we will create multiple components.
Correct. We will create multiple components. Every component will have its own HTML.
Okay, so for like multiple files, we are creating multiple components.
Correct. For every page, one component will be available, or for every section, one component will be available. One page can have 2 sections also, right? For every section, one component we are going to create.
Okay.
Understood?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, hi.
Sir,
Yeah, I have a doubt.
Yes, sir, tell me.
Yeah, package.json and angular.json. Exactly what is the difference between both of them?
Package.json file contains dependency versions. In the Angular, there are some packages. So which version we need to use, that will be there in the package.json. Angular.json means how you will deploy the Angular application, how you will package the application, where is your deployment section will be there. That will be part of Angular.json.
Angular.json file, we get the data from the JSON means URL, right?
No. This is by default created already.
Okay.
Angular.json contains what is your welcome file, what is your main TypeScript file, build information will be available. That means how to deploy the Angular application, that configuration is there in the Angular.json. To develop this Angular application, what are the Angular packages, what are the dependencies? In the Java application, what dependencies will configure? MySQL dependency, Spring dependency, Hibernate dependency, like that, right? So similarly, the dependencies will be configured in the Angular in the package.json. Angular will use Angular DevKit, Angular CLI, Angular Jasmine, Angular Karma, Angular TypeScript. So which version of the TypeScript we need to use? TypeScript is a dependency. So in the Java pom.xml is equal to Angular package.json.
Okay. And I have another question regarding interview. Actually, today before I take the give the interview, so they asking me regarding joins. So I directly told I use the APIs different, and I call directly. So means they wanted how to use the joins means.
Correct. Joins. So have you done Oracle course?
Oracle I know, but in a Hibernate I don't know actually.
How to implement joins in the Hibernate? Okay, I will cover that in the project.
Yeah, actually they asked me how do you develop this project, HSI project mentioned, so I directly told
Sure.
using mapping I did.
I will take that class.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, sir.
Thank you. Hi, bye.
Sir, data from one component to another component is flowing, or just content is getting included?
Content is including, and we can transfer the data from one component to another component also. In the routing concept, I will tell you how to navigate from one page to another page as a single page application. How to transfer the data from one component to another component also I will explain.
Okay, sir.
Currently, just one component data is including in the another component.
Sir, what is log.json?
Sir, it's just like a include tag in HTML.
Correct.
Okay.
Sir, what is log.json?
Where is that?
This Angular.json below. Package.log.json.
Package log.json. Node modules. Which modules of we are using from the node? Those modules information is available in the log.json. Okay.
Hello, sir.
Why?
Sir, Hibernate is really needed, or else we can go with Spring Data GPA.
IDEA with the Hibernate IDEA is required. It's required. Without you knowing the Hibernate, you can't understand JPA directly, right?
Yes, sir, that is right. But we can achieve whatever we are achieving using Hibernate.
Yeah. Apart from some complex join queries, remaining stuff we can achieve easily. Some complex joins and all will become difficult to write in the data JPA. Okay.
Okay.
Sir, whenever request from the browser, it will show in the index page, right?
Correct.
Yeah, here the app component, the parent and the child is two, great and wish.
Correct.
We are interconnecting using the selector, means
Correct.
app grid. We have to put the right.
Correct.
Okay, sir.
Sir, what is the use of main.ts then?
Sir, main.ts file is loading your content with respect to the browser. The browser response, browser bundling part will be available in the main.ts file. If you see platform browser dynamic, so in which browser you are accessing your application, according to that browser, it is going to convert your response, and it is going to have a bootstrapping module. That means it is loading the app module first as a parent module. That is the logic. In the main.ts file, platform browser dynamic.bootstrap module called app module. It is loading app module first. In the app module, what will be available? If you see app.module.ts file, here we are telling that these are the three components available in the application. You need to load these three components. In that, first you need to bootstrap the app component. That bootstrapping process we are going to configure in the main.ts. We don't change this. By default, this file is created.
So it is same applicable for all the browsers, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Hi, sir.
Yep.
Sir, my doubt is regarding project creation. Sir, can't we create the project directly? How we create project in Spring Boot?
No.
Okay,
You need
sir.
to use Angular CLI to do that project, because for Angular there is no separate IDE.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Ashok, this is Hima. Do we ever mess up with or do we ever add any dependencies like we do with pom.xml in the one in Angular?
No, the packages by default it will provide whichever we need.
So we don't touch that, right?
We don't touch that.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Hello, sir.
Sir.
Sir, I want to know, in Java we are doing the debugging. Can we do same thing here in Angular also?
No, sir. In the Angular debugging means we need to do in the browser developer tools. Okay.
Using browser only.
Correct.
Hello, sir. Kapil this side.
Hi, Kapil.
Sir, my question is that you just mentioned that there is no ID for Angular, just like Spring Boot and Java. So we just use the CLI. So like it's command line interface. So like how it deal with that? Like it is just interface or like what internally implementation is done?
CLI. Angular is having a CLI software to create the project, to run the project. All are CLI.
We can say, sir, that is server or something else.
No, it is just a CLI software.
Okay. And the second question is, sir, like we have the component.ts and another one is component.spec.ts. So like what is the difference in both?
Component, I already told. Component.ts is a TypeScript class which contains the logic of your component. Spec.ts is a unit test file like our JUnit.
Unit test. Got it, sir. Thank you, sir.
Hello, sir. Santosh this side.
Hi.
Sir, how can we change the port number in
That
Angular?
we will discuss in the coming class, because that is not our server, it is a live server.
Okay.
Sir, can you post the today's paint image?
Yes, I'm posting in the WhatsApp group. I will share the complete image file. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Fine, guys. Thank you. With this, I'm stopping for today and we'll continue in the tomorrow session. Please practice whatever we have done in the today's session, creating the project, creating the child components, invoking the child components from the parent component, changing the messages by using CSS, that stuff. Tomorrow we'll talk about data binding. Thank you, guys. Good night, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, we'll connect. So tomorrow morning, that is Docker session for the people, and for 21 JRTP, we have evening Angular directly tomorrow. Yes.